Hi, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining Turn Digi. This is our fourth session, actually, our fourth English session of Turn Digi, the online marketing conference that supports entrepreneurs, rising talent, and has a diverse range of speakers. I'm Juliana Turnbull, and I am also known as SEO Joe Blogs. I'm an SEO consultant and also growth market at Authoritas. And I'm really fortunate here to be joined by 10 speakers here today who will be sharing actionable insights about different aspects of online marketing, even PPC, paid search, Google shopping ads, as well as getting buy-in from your boss, plus, of course, SEO tips for everyone to implement straight away. And this is a truly international event. We are dialing in from 4 countries. So I'm dialing in from Barcelona, Spain. We have today Roxanne and Sherry dialing in from the UK, and we also have Anne dialing in from over in Melbourne, Australia. So later this afternoon, we'll have the US join us too, which is great to hear. And I'd also like to give a thank you to our media partner, WebSearching, who also run international events. They run International Search Summit. And a big thank you to my sister, Ruth Turnbull, who's actually in Melbourne with Anne. They've actually just come out of quite a strict lockdown. So thanks very much, Anne. It's quite late there for joining us tonight. So today in our session, starting now, we have Anne talking about how to get in buy-in from your boss for those SEO initiatives. Then we have Sherry, social media tips to elevate your marketing strategy. And then we have Roxana, who's going to talk to us about Web Core Vitals and the performance report. So very excited to have these three great experts and speakers share their tips with us. For Turn Digi, we have 3 sessions in the day. We have this one, and we have 2 more this afternoon, one at 12:30 and then later on. So I will pass over to Anne, who will then share her tips and really how can you get that buy-in from your boss for SEO initiatives. If you have any questions, we will have Q&A after each speaker, so please drop them in the chat. And hello, Marianne, David, Vanny, and Lawrence, and everyone else not signed in yet. So I'll pass over to Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for inviting me to speak. It is quite international. It's currently 9 o'clock here in Melbourne, Australia, on a public holiday Friday night. So I intentionally didn't drink so I can stay nice and alert for this talk for everyone. So I've got 10 minutes. Joe wants us to do 10 minutes of actionable tips, so let's keep going. Quick intro who I am. I'm Anne Shu. I'm the co-founder and SEO director at Full Measure. We're a dedicated SEO and SEM agency based in Melbourne, Australia. Myself, I've been doing online marketing for nearly 20 years and specializing in SEO just over a decade. So I am quite, with the tips that I'm offering comes with the experience that I've got. And here we go. So I'm going to do a fun little countdown. So here are my top 10 ways to get buy-in for your SEO initiatives. The title does say boss, but it's not just buy-in from your boss. It's also buy-in from your colleagues. And in my case, as an external SEO agency, getting buy-ins from your clients and then the internal team within your clients' organizations. So I'm going to take you through what's worked for me. Okay, counting down at number 5, we have competition brings out the best in products, and in this case, in our websites. We all know jealousy is a strong emotion. So how can we use that to our advantage to get our boss to buy in with the ideas that you have? Break down what your competitors are doing and the results they're achieving. And it's also important to choose the right data visualization or graph to tell a story. So for example, you can use a keyword ranking or a search visibility data visualization here, showing this is the competitors, where they stand with the set of keywords that we're tracking, and this is where we are. Then you could break it down into user intent or topics. So here you could see this is us, this is our competitors, and using the right data visualization, you're telling a story about where you sit against your competitors, and not just from an overall perspective, but breaking it down into different categories that in your market. Another way to present competitor data, this is a link profile. This is you, this is your competitors. Again, graphs, the right graphs tells the right story. Show off your search results. Okay, where a search result is kind of like a showroom, you standing next to all your competitors. So show off, this is us, this is our competitors. Even our competitors are ranked below us, them taking advantage of rich snippets has a much nicer looking search result that people want to click on. Again, our competitors are taking advantage of FAQ schemas. They take the time to write compelling meta descriptions, show off, this is us, this is the competitors. Coming in at number 4, how to get buy-in from your SEO boss or colleagues. So the phrase is, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. What this means is it's about creating more SEO champions in your organization. And to do that, it's about educating, educating, educating. So how can we do that? Sometimes you have to break down SEO and explain it to them like they're a 5-year-old. What works for me is using analogies, diagrams, stories, whatever it takes to get your message across to your audience. This is actually a real life example I presented to a client last month. I'm trying to explain to them how a faceted search was creating duplicate URLs and it was creating bloated index. Now, how do you explain that to a marketing team that knows nothing about SEO technical? So I explained it using honey and ants, and it got the point across, and I got technical resources to get the job done. Share timely and relevant SEO announcements. I know, being an SEO geek myself, I read every article and I just want to share everything, but choose what to share, choose what's relevant, and not just share what's relevant, but summarize it for them. Tell them why you need to know this. So in this example, you can send it to them in an email, but make sure you summarize it. In a Slack channel, again, don't just paste a link and expect them to read the whole article. Assume they didn't read the article and just give them the 2-minute summary, and then start a conversation within your team to talk about it. Some people just don't like to read articles, so hold a lunch and learn session. It's like where people can read an article for free. It's like you can exercise at home for free, but often some people don't do that and they need an appointment to be at the gym, to meet a personal trainer, and that's the only time that they can exercise. Similarly with education, if there's a time, they turn up for it as opposed to reading it themselves. All right, coming down to number 3 now. Timing is everything. So what I mean by this is you need to frame SEO into the bigger picture. Don't just treat SEO as if it's the only thing that's important to them. Where does it fit into the whole organization? So it's very critical to find the right moment to raise your ideas to the right person. So when is that right timing? There could be a shift in priorities of where the business is focused on. One example could be, right now, this retailer wants to drive more in-store visits as opposed to online appointments. Great. This is the perfect time for me to introduce my Google My Business strategy. There could be a change in organizational structure. Okay, the new marketing chief of marketing used to come from a customer service role in the past. Talk to them about how important page speed is for great customer experience. Find initiatives where timing is critical. Talk to them about how we're not going to get this opportunity like this again. So is there an upcoming event that only happens once? So therefore, if we don't act now, we're going to lose this opportunity. Piggyback off existing initiatives. Sometimes it's easier to get on a train that's already leaving the station. Can you attach your SEO ideas onto a project that's already been greenlit, ready to go, and you can just add on some extra things that's complementary to that project? If you had one shot, one opportunity, would you capture it or just let it slip? Said by our poet Eminem. So all about timing. All right, we're coming down to the final 2 now with 4 minutes to go. So top 2 tip is, great things come from small beginnings. So what I mean by that is, can you break up your bigger SEO project into smaller pieces of business as usual tasks or BAU tasks? So rather than talking about, we need to change the whole e-commerce site architecture, it's not targeting what users are looking for. Let's go, okay, let's say you're a clothing retailer. Let's just focus on women's, still too big. All right, can we just optimize outerwear? Maybe even still too big. All right, let's just focus on coats. Great, because we can put that as a BAU ticket and it's only seen as a JIRA ticket as opposed to a big piece of work. Because as we all know, smaller tasks go under the radar. Your boss is probably not going to be obsessing over every JIRA ticket that you put in. And make sure you benchmark the before and after, no matter how small the task seems. So it's something as simple as, I've realized that the meta title for our promotions page should be called Offers Now. Show what the keyword ranking is before, the traffic is before, what that small change was, what the effect was. So you can actually show the difference. And now with those results, you can present a success story. So very important to show that look what I was able to do with just such a small piece of work. Imagine what we could do if we can apply this learning to the entire website. And coming at number one, the number one way to get buy-in from your boss and all your colleagues. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. So what that means is gather fans. A phrase that I always use with my clients and when I talk to clients, colleagues is SEO is not an island. We can't just do it by ourselves. It can't be done by an external agency. And as we all know, SEO only works when the whole organization is involved. So try and make SEO part of everyone's job. As I mentioned, you can go to the customer service team and talk to them how SEO could be part of their job. You know, this is what people are looking for on Google. Customers are Googling this. We need to make sure, you know, your content fulfills this. PR, we can't get links without you. You know, SEO would fall over if we don't get PR helping us. Going to the tech team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let them know that you may not know it, but SEO is part of your job. Ensuring SEO has a seat at every table when decisions are being made. So even if you just drop in as an observer, it's important that SEO is part of every conversation. And if you can't physically be there as an external agency, I can't be in the client's office all the time. So if you can't be there, send in your SEO champion. See my previous tip earlier. How do you do that? You create more SEO champions. And how do you do that? You educate them. So therefore, you have mini versions of you sitting at the table when key decisions getting made. Another tip is find out what everyone is working on. What are their goals right now? And then help you help them. So how can you make SEO part of their job? And therefore, they'd be invested in making SEO part of their job as well. You've got to tailor your pitch. The way you sell SEO to the PR team can't be the same way that you sell it to the customer service team. So make sure you tailor the way you sell it to each department. Make it hard for them to say no. So do whatever it takes. If they can't be bothered doing a checklist to do it for them. Oh, it's too hard to update meta titles and some H1 headings. I'll upload it. I'll go into the CMS for you. Make it hard for them to say no to your initiatives. And then once the job is complete, similar to selling the success story, praise everyone that was involved, even the smallest contribution. We couldn't have done it without you. So therefore, going back to my first point, jealousy, no one wants to miss out on being part of a success story. So hopefully that story spreads throughout the organization and they want to be part of the next SEO project with you. Whew, and that's it. So that's my top 5 ways to get SEO buy-in. Quick recap. Show what your competitors are doing. Number 4, create SEO champions by educating. Number 3, make sure you choose the right moments. And that also means choosing your battles. Number 2, how can you start small? How can you sneak in some quick SEO wins so you can demonstrate the value of what you do? And the last one is gather fans. Make sure SEO is part of everyone's job. And that's it. I hope that was useful, and hopefully you'll hear some other wonderful speakers today and you'll utilize these tips so you can, implement some great ideas that you hear. Thank you. So Jo, do I pass it back over to you?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you very much. That was great. I especially liked your what do you call it, gifts and your different quotes. So, well, actually, I was just thinking, do you have a slide to show? Maybe we can go back to your first slide so people can contact you, and I'll ask in the meantime some questions around your tips. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So you're on at the Women Tech SEO, great community, LinkedIn, and at your company, Full Measure Digital. I didn't realize it was a national holiday today.
It's a national holiday around a football game.
Yeah.
It gets even better.
Footy.
Next week, we have a national holiday over a horse race.
Oh,
Melbourne
yes.
Cup.
I forgot. There we go. The Melbourne Cup. I forgot about that. Yes. Well, thank you for joining us today. Actually, Michael's just asked, you seem really great at persuasions. He was just asking how many clients you have, and maybe perhaps how did you get to be that? Because
I like to say it's a 10-year overnight success. Yeah, so me and my business partner started the business in 2010. So yeah, it's been a long time coming. And I can see Michael's question, how many clients do you have? Yeah, so at the moment, I think, oh God, I don't know off the top of my head, but we have a team of 12 and we specialize in both SEO and SEM. And yeah, I think we have maybe 20 all up, but they range from, big organizations. So we look after like Jetstar, Uniqlo, Michael Hill, Maya, which is a big department store here, Snooze, which sells bedding, Open Uni, which does, all the way down to startups that the business owner is the founder, or we work with a franchise business. So, yeah, like I said, these tips come from my experience working from massive enterprises with international offices all the way down to sole traders with very limited budgets, and they just need to convince their one boss to implement some of their ideas.
Yeah, well, that's great. And Meyer, yeah, it's very impressive. So Meyer, I think maybe would be equivalent of, I don't know, El Corte Inglés in Europe, and maybe it would be a John Lewis in the UK. So that's very, very big. So I had a question really just about how you've offered loads of tips, but maybe just what has been the biggest impact you had about the you said great things from small beginnings. So what was the biggest impact you had from changing little things?
Yeah, like that example I just mentioned, changing just the meta title, that was in at Jetstar, actually. That's a big Australian airline owned by Qantas. It's a budget airline, but still they've got offices in Japan, Singapore and Hong Kong, but their head office is in Melbourne. And, being a big enterprise, also being a budget airline, very limited resources, we had to demonstrate where SEO was crucial to their success. But at the time, we just couldn't get anything into development. It was always, we just couldn't prioritize it. So that tip about breaking it into BAU tasks came from me working with that client. And one of the examples was for rest of the world, what they call sales, they would call, promotions and sales, etc. But in Singapore, they don't call it promotions, they call it offer. Oh no, the other way around. We called it offers and sales, but in Singapore, they don't call it that. They call it promos or promotions. So we had to just change the way that in Singaporeans spoke. And just that small little change, we were able to, triple the traffic because it was relevant to that country. So it really spun off a much bigger project at this client, where it wasn't about translation, it was about localization. So it's not about hiring, just going to Google Translate and going, well, we called it, offers, so therefore we'll use the Singapore version of the word offers. It's still in English, but, like there'll be other examples like Vietnam and Japanese, but we had learnt that, yes, it translates and it's correct, but that's not what people are typing in. So we were able to demonstrate that, and that kicked off a much bigger project about localizing the content over translation.
Oh, great. That's very interesting to hear. Yeah, I know after living in Australia, the US, and UK, how it's English, but people use different words and they mean different things. So you got to be careful.
Exactly.
Thanks. Yeah, that was very insightful. Thank you very much, and for giving up your Friday night, their first week of, they've started reducing the restrictions or lifting the restrictions. So thanks very much. So we'll get everyone to contact you on LinkedIn, Annie, and Chu, or at your company, Full Measure Digital. And for those that are part of the Women in Tech group, you can find her on the Slack channel.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, we now have Sherry, who will be speaking to us about social media trends. Very excited to have Sherry with us today. I've known Sherry, I think about 3 or so years. We worked in another event together. So really excited to have you on, Sherry, and for you to share your different social media trends. I'll pass over to you.
Hello, and thanks so much for having me. This is the second time that I do a session here with TurnDigi, and it's really great to come here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sherry Mander. I'm a social media and digital marketing consultant and founder of Digital Tulips, a freelance business to help small and medium-sized companies be found and grow online. Now, when I'm not growing businesses, I'm busy being mom to these little monkeys that you see here on the screen. But enough about me, and let's dig into basically my talk today, which is about social media. Social media is very exciting to me because this is where I started my journey in digital marketing. And a little fun fact about me is that during the Arab Spring, I was a Facebook manager to one of the pages helping to fight injustice and oppression. I saw firsthand the power of the digital platforms and the thirst, for the consumption of social media content back in those days. But back in those days, pages grew very quickly and people were on Facebook all the time, and the organic reach was, amazing. It was crazy. People back then were like dancing the Gangnam Style. I don't know if you remember the song or not, but fast forward a few years and the atmosphere on social is very different. As more and more people began to go onto the feeds, new content was fighting for spaces in those feeds, as well as the regulations and the data protection laws. It meant that algorithms had to be more stricter, and therefore organic reach had significantly reduced during the last few years. Hence the reason why, like other digital technologies, social's constant change makes it so important for marketers to continue to learn and adapt. So if you're stuck really doing the things of the past, you're not really going to get results. And so it's so important to look at new technology and new features and try to embrace this. And basically, before I start, I'd like you to share one of the profiles you have. I'm sure all of us have social media profiles. So choose your favorite platform and put a link in the comment section, and then we'll all go follow you. So basically, just to start, is when you're on social media, you need to ask yourself, what is going to make you stop scrolling? What's going to capture your attention? This is something that you really need to think about, because it's very tricky to stand out from the crowd, and you need to create content that resonates with everyone. So by looking and seeing what catches your attention, this is going to make you really realize, okay, maybe I should be creating more content of that. So I'm going to start out today by my 8 tips to skyrocket your organic impressions in 2020 and beyond. I'm not going to be talking about any paid advertisements here. I'm just going to be concentrating on your organic performance. And I think my first tip that I wanted to discuss was finding your niche. It's very important to ask yourself who your ideal client is. You need to clearly identify who that person is. You need to ask yourself, what problems do they have and how you can solve it? Identify what makes you different, what makes you unique. And this is the best way to start, because if you build all that information about who your users are, you'll be easily able to build content that is for them. A really good way to put it is using this articulate statement. It was developed by a person called Mel Abraham. He's an entrepreneur and business manager. And basically here, you have to, you just put down, who do you want to help? What do you want to help with? What results do you want to get? Customer alternatives and distinction. And by writing this articulate statement of yours, you'll be able to identify exactly the kind of person that you're going to be talking to on social. So for example, this is mine. As an example, so I help stay-at-home moms wanting to start a business, build a brand and market it online so that they can create a flexible life that they love and long for. Being overwhelmed, so unlike being overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, because my passion is to help and empower people to believe that there is nothing impossible. So by writing it down, you get a clear idea of the kind of person that you're going to be talking to on social. And therefore, it'll make it a lot easier for you to create content that resonates with these kind of people. Also, you have to look at the kind of platform that you're hoping to go on. There's so many of them out there.
Playing out the coupe at the lot, Tony for 12 for SWAT, buzzing out the bell. Everybody make some TikTok.
So you cannot be on all platforms. You need to realize that. You need to find who your ideal customer is, which platforms they are, and these are the platforms that you're going to concentrate on. So definitely looking into your niche, where they are, what they do, their problems would be the first tip that you need to do. Write them down. The second thing that you need to do is to set yourself an achievable goal, because it's very important to know where you're going. Because if you wing social and you post day in and day out, it's going to be both frustrating and exhausting. So by creating an achievable goal, this will sort of set your mind to what you want to achieve. A good way to start is by saying, why is my business active on social media in the first place? Think about it. Is it to increase awareness, generate more leads, have community engagement, grow your brand's audience, increase traffic? So ask yourself this question and write your answer down. Goals can vary, obviously, by business. So if you're a small business, your objective could be to engage local followers and grow a community presence. If you're a new online startup or a jewelry store, for example, maybe perhaps build awareness for your new product and generate more leads. The third tip that comes is to spy on your competitor accounts. And I think this tip is really cool because it gives you great insight as to who your competition is and what they're doing. And what you can do is just snoop around and see what they're doing and try to make it better. So make your channel more interactive. You look at their follower counts, the frequency of their posts, the kind of posts that they post, or the images, the videos, which posts are getting more engagement. Look at their followers. So for example, on Twitter and on Instagram, you can actually go and check out their followers and perhaps look at what their followers are posting and maybe comment and write, and comment and write a like or a share of their following. So this way they will see who you are as direct competition. The fourth tip here is to allocate time each month to create content. Now that you have a general idea of who your niche is, as well as writing down your goal and also finding who your competitors are and looking at seeing what kind of content they do, I suggest that it's so important that you have like a day in a month to create content and plan it. So just brainstorm your content ideas. I love to use applications like Trello, where you can use it on your computer as well as on your phone. And whenever you get an idea, just write it down. I find that I generally get my ideas as I'm driving my kids from school or just before bed. So having my phone on hand so I can quickly write my ideas are great. And then once I have all these ideas that just come into me, one day I sit down in a month and just try to create content for the whole month and just batch it out. So planning ahead and is a good way, creating lists of important events in your business, special dates, researching and writing lists of relevant hashtags is also very important, because the use of hashtags is great for this organic reach, especially on Instagram, and even Facebook has now introduced it. I'm sure you know also LinkedIn, you can use hashtags as well as Twitter. So I'm not going to go into details here about hashtags, but it's so important to research it, to find out which relevant hashtags are good for each post, and just create themed hashtags that you can quickly copy and paste in your posts. I also tell my clients to try to create a weekly content theme, so it can make it easier for them to plan content throughout the week. So for instance, you know, on Monday, share a quote. On Tuesday, a before and after image or video. Again, Wednesday, perhaps sharing a post or an interesting article. Thursday, insight about your business, and so forth throughout the day. It's a good way to get like an overall plan of what you're going to you know, create content on throughout the week. And it's nice to have that theme going on, and users would sort of understand every day. They, you know, they'll be sort of like looking forward to, they know that maybe every Monday that you write a quote. And it's just the way that you create the quote and making it unique and stand out, that's going to what makes you different from others. Once you have that written, try to find a good social media scheduling tool that will help you batch content for the whole month. This is a great way, because then it will leave you time to actually engage with your followers. So I like to use Creators Studio, and that's Facebook has designed this. Also, Buffer is a good option. You have Hootsuite, ContentCal, HubSpot, and there's so many out there. So just find one that you're comfortable using and use it. The fifth tip is to create content that stands out from the crowd. You know, the feed is so competitive out there. What's going to make you stand out from all your other people out there? You know, you need to create something that is just brilliant, that's amazing. And at the moment, video content is what's really pushing out there. As you can see here by the statistics, 82% of all online content will be video by 2022. That's because people now have a span of a fish, really. They just want to get really quick, short and sweet information, tips, or something that is cool and funny, but just quickly, because they're browsing the feed so fast. What's going to make them stop? You have to really think about that. Video content, like I said, is going to continue to dominate. And there's so many applications out there that can help you do that. Applications like Canva, you have InShot, you have other different tools out there that you can sort of use to create really interesting videos. Try to, you know, be more different. Try to be a little bit more daring in the posts that you create. Try to be quick, portray a message, give something that is insightful. Something that is different. And here there are 3 examples that I gave you by UNICEF. That's just, I like this because it just gives you a really cool message, and it's very short and sweet. That's done on TikTok. And at the moment, also Reels on Instagram is a big thing. Here you can also get another example, and that's of a cleaning company, the before and afters. It's sort of here they're using images as well as a video to show off the before and after. Here there's a doctor who is performing a treatment, and it's great to get insight on how the treatment is performed. People like this kind of things, and you can see how the views here, 1,400 views, is just by posting something that people would be interested in. My 6th tip is, of course, is to embrace the new features on social media. And I think this is the hottest tip right now, because the best way to gain organic followers here is that to look and take advantage of the new features that each platform is using. So social media algorithms are really rewarding users who are using these new features. A good example is Instagram's new Reels. I don't know if you guys have tried them before, but it's a really cool, fun way, and it's just basically very similar to TikTok. So I created a Reel just a day ago, really, and you can see I've never, for me, unfortunately, because I spend so much time on my client side, you know, social media and digital marketing, I haven't been posting regularly on my own feed. So when I posted this, just I think yesterday or the day before, when I picked it up, 161 views. although I wasn't active at all. And that just shows you the power of using new features and how the algorithm is going to reward you for using that. And because there are not so many people who are using it frequently now, you can take advantage of that by embracing all these new features. Also, LinkedIn stories. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not. I tried posting this yesterday and I quickly took a screenshot of it. And I can tell you that, again, try to adapt and be flexible by using these kind of features, and the platforms are going to reward that. Also, using augmented reality and virtual reality is the way forward. Previously, only specific accounts can create these kind of AR or using virtual reality, but at the moment, Facebook Spark AR Studio is now anyone can use it really. So it's just basically being creative and going on and creating your own augmented reality kind of things. I'm sure you've seen these kind of cool filters with, like, bunny ears and all of that you can actually create and put on your social accounts, and your followers can use them and share. It's a great way of capturing that. Also, we find a lot of e-commerce sites are helping customers by making it very fun and interactive, such as trying new glasses. Here, Coach has done that, and I'm trying the new glasses. Oh, lipstick, and there's another educational filter. So a doctor is trying to educate its followers by the different veins in the face, and also trying out lipstick. Sephora has done that, where you can go onto their account and just try your own different kinds of different colored lipsticks on it, which is just great. So trying to be creative is the way forward, because just having a boring text or taking a stock image is not really going to work nowadays. You need to really dig in and become really creative. And like I said, going and looking at what's already on the feed is going to give you inspiration if you are not that kind of creative person. The seventh tip is, of course, to engage with your audience. And I think this is also very important. A lot of people, unfortunately, what they do is that they just broadcast. So they go onto their buffer or their Hootsuite and they batch content for the rest of the month, and then they say, okay, I'm sorted. Actually, it doesn't work that way, because your organic reach is going to thrive if you are interacting with your audience. If you're not doing that, no one is going to like and share and retweet or whatever. It's very important to create communities, to be authentic. Why do you need that? Again, it's affirming who you are. It's going to start a conversation that, what are their problems, and maybe you try to address their solutions. It provides brand awareness and an entire, it's basically looking for your business. People will see you in a different way, as well as it improves your trust and authenticity. So definitely have time in the day, in the morning or in the evening, half an hour, just to go over to your business accounts and just interact with your followers, like their posts, share. If someone's asking you a question, answer. Be very interactive, because that's the way forward. The other thing to do when you want to be interactive is to take part in communities. Now, communities have been going on for a very long time, but it's really picked up now, especially with communities such as those on Facebook groups, because people want a sense of belonging. Although, if you look at Facebook in general, people tend to spend more time in groups rather than just in their feeds. And so if you sort of go into these specific groups and interact just as your person, giving your own knowledge, going and asking the admin if you can maybe run a live session for their followers, be interactive and genuinely just giving tips, advice, without really advertising what you are doing as a service provider. But just giving good, genuine advice is going to create that trust between you and the brands. So taking part in communities is great. This is the kind of groups that I am in. Do share with me in the comments the groups that you're in, and it'll be good to see the kind of groups that you guys are also into. So share a link if you have a group of yours, even if you created your own group. And finally, my last tip is to look at your analytics and tweak, because you really don't know what's going to be working and what's not. And so the platforms, all of them, have a great way of you taking a look at the analytics and making sure you know what you are, what is working and what is not. Look at the engagement, look at the traffic. You get a lot of information about what is really working and what is not. And basically, that is my 8 tips to skyrocket your organic impressions. Again, finding your niche, set yourself an achievable goal, spy on your competitor's account, allocate time each month to create content that stands out from the crowd, embrace new features, and engage with your audience. And finally, look at your analytics and tweak. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take it.
Oh, thank you very much, Sherry, for that. So yeah, we can get hold of you at your Twitter, Sherry Mandor, and also
it's back to my last question. I think I have it on my slide, sorry. But yeah, I'm on most platforms. I'm more active on, well, I try to be active on LinkedIn and Twitter. Yeah, so please connect with me. My Instagram, my Facebook page for my business, as well as my Twitter and LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Well, I just have one question because we just run out of time. So just really to emphasize what you said you shouldn't really just be pushing out content. What was the tip that you would say to people that say, oh, I don't have time to do social media, I just share my things in LinkedIn?
A lot of people do that, and I'm one of them, because I'm so busy, working for clients, and I'm sure all of us are. We don't have the time to do it. But I think the mentality is that if you want to have the time, you will have it. There's 24 hours. There's 24 hours in the day, and you have 7 days a week. If you divide your time correctly, you will find the time. And I think a lot of, if you take my advice by having or blocking 1 day of the month just to create that content, it doesn't have to be frequent, but it has to be consistent, because consistency is the most important. If you can't do it every day, don't post for the sake of posting. Create something that will really stand out, and that's when you can post it and be happy with it. It's not just the fact that, oh, I need to post something or something. No, try to be consistent. Okay, I'm gonna have time. I'm gonna do it 3 times a week. That's fine. You don't have to. Of course, the more exposure that you have, the people see your brand, the better. But if you don't have the time, don't just shut it off completely. Just try to be consistent.
Okay, great. So consistency is key. Well, thank you very much, Sherry, for sharing those tips with us today. So your slides will be available as well afterwards. We'll send them out to you next week. And I just want to also then bring in Roxana. So she's talking about something very relevant as well. And also, I think some of you may have seen around Web Core Vitals, what it is, how you can get involved, what you can do with it. So Roxana is here to actually tell you the complete lowdown about it and also the performance report. So I'm going to pass over to Roxana.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. So I'm going to briefly cover the new Web Core Vitals and then go through how the performance report in Chrome's developer tools can be used to identify these new metrics. So a little bit about me. I started in SEO in 2006 as a link builder, which I did for about 3 years. And then I spent the next 10 years in the hosting industry working for all sorts of brands, including working for the EMEA side of GoDaddy. And now I work at Alamy, a stock photography agency with over 210 million images in its collection. I am also a very proud member of the Women in Tech SEO, as are most of us on the call today. And I've had the great opportunity of writing a chapter on speed for Blue Array's Mastering In-House SEO book, and you can find it on page 162. You can also hear me talk at different virtual events, the last one being Brighton SEO, where I did another talk on speed, more precisely optimizing time to first byte. And if there's one thing I miss most about the life we had before the COVID quarantine, is being able to attend conferences in person. And that's mostly because my favorite pastime is stalking John Mueller on the hallways of all sorts of events and getting a picture with him. And as you can see in these pictures, there's a trend. I do like a cardigan. Okay, so let's get started. In May, Google has introduced a new set of speed measuring metrics and decided to combine these with already existing page experience signals and create a new page experience ranking signal that is to take effect sometime next year. They'll let us know when. From a search point of view, this new ranking signal won't be a major one, as relevancy and great content will still be prioritized, even if those pages have subpar page experience metrics. The signal will be used more to differentiate when multiple pages are head to head in terms of relevancy for a topic. But from a user point of view, a better overall page experience leads to better engagement, which in turn can lead to better conversions and indirectly even better rankings and more organic visibility. So, however you want to sell this to your current stakeholders, it is something that requires our immediate attention. And looking at some of the page experience elements, mobile friendliness is not new, but the fact that Google will go mobile index only by March of 2021 is somewhat new, so make sure your websites are ready by then. Safe browsing and making the web secure has been a priority for Google for years, and the web is already mostly running on HTTPS nowadays. And I hope I don't even have to mention the annoying pop-ups and how we got a lecturing from Google on those when the search engine decided to penalize sites that abuse them. So the really new and shiny things here are just the web core vitals in this case. And these are the new values, and I will quickly explain each one of them. The first new one that we need to get really friendly with is the largest contentful paint, and it replaces the previously used first contentful paint in Search Console. Measuring the time it takes for the first element to become visible on a page is not that relevant to the whole user experience, as there still can be a lot of time from this point until something useful actually comes up on the page. So Google has decided that it would be more relevant to measure how long the user has to wait until the biggest element of the page becomes visible, as that's going to be more useful. And even for me as a user, that makes perfect sense. If I go on a page and I see a logo has loaded, I don't get any value from that page. But if I see that their main heading and a paragraph of text or an image has loaded, I now have something to start looking at while other things are loading, and I am getting value out of it. So, from my point of view as a user, I perceive the page as loaded, even if there are other things loading off screen. So, believe it or not, Google has found a way to more accurately measure the perceived loading time of a page. So, what will Google consider as candidates for the largest elements on a page? And that's pretty much any above the fold image. And this includes SVGs, but only if they use the image element. It can also be the poster image for videos or the image you're showing while a video is loading. For backgrounds, it will only apply to elements that use images URL function, but not if they're only added in CSS. And it will also apply to whole blocks of text. So it is not yet working directly for SVGs in videos, but it might in the close future. So if you're wondering what happens if your image starts above the fold but extends all the way below it, so let's say a long infographic, Google will only be measuring how long it takes for the part of the image that is in the viewport to load, and it doesn't really care about the rest of it. So if you have, as long as the top of it loads really fast, you're going to hit great LCP times. The next measurement in the trio of new Core Web Vitals is actually not new. This has been reported in our Search Console since Google introduced the speed report, and it's been kept because it's a very important metric. If a website loads its content fast, that doesn't guarantee that the page is also interactive, and the user might have to look at an apparently fully loaded page for a few seconds more before it can actually click on anything. And that is so annoying. So that's why this metric was needed to measure the time from when a user first interacts with the page. So pretty much when they click on a link or a button or a drop down to the time when the browser is actually able to begin processing event handlers in response to that interaction. So to better understand that, let's consider this timeline here as being typical for a page load. We have the gray bars that represent the time it takes for various resources to download. So the time it takes for them to download over the network, and this would be the HTML document followed by any kind of CSS and JavaScript files usually. Then as some resources download, they are being processed by the main thread, which means any other actions are stalled while the main thread finishes each task. And we can see when the browser is busy by looking at these yellow bars. If the user happens to click at the beginning of one of the longer tasks that are keeping the main thread busy, the user would not see a reaction from the browser until that task finishes and the main thread becomes available again to process that click request. And the delay between the click and when the request actually starts is what is measured as the first input delay. I mentioned event listeners before. If you don't know what these are, just imagine it as little bits of JavaScript that is meant to wait for a certain event to happen before doing something rather than just executing as soon as it's found in the HTML. So as an example, you wouldn't get a drop-down menu until you click on a menu button. Although event listeners are used in measuring the first input delay, they're not always needed, and there are some common events that can produce a high first input delay if they're being actioned by users when the main thread is still busy. And these interactions have to do with pretty much all text fields, drop downs, and links. And these are usually the most common interactions a user has with a website. So last but definitely not least, we have the cumulative layout shift. Again, a very important metric that I want to believe measures user frustration, although Google says it's designed to measure visual stability. And this metric takes above the fold elements and measures if they move around from their initial position, causing the user to hover over a link, for example, that changes its position on the screen right before clicking it, resulting in like a mini game of catch that link where the only prize is just one unhappy user. So if the previous metrics were both calculated in time units, for this metric, the browser looks at the viewport size and the movement of unstable elements in the viewport between the two rendered frames. So then the layout shift score is a product of two measures of their movement, the impact fraction and the distance fraction. And you can see the impact fraction on the left where the original text takes up about half of the viewport, but then it moves down by a quarter of the viewport. So overall, there has been movement from one frame to another on 75% of the viewport. So the value as a fraction here would be 0.75. On the right, we have the distance fraction, which is calculated by looking at the greatest distance that an element has traveled during the shift, be it vertically or horizontally, and dividing that by the largest dimension of the viewport, which in our case is the height. So in this example, the text has moved by 25%, which makes the dimension value 0.25. So now if we calculate CLS as being this equation here, we get 0.75 times 0.25, and that's a value of 0.1875. I know I used the calculator for it. You don't have to double check it. But that value is above the 0.1 threshold for us to pass as green. So we actually fall in this orange area with this value here. Right, so when it comes to measuring the new metrics, Google has already updated its own tools to use the new Web Core Vitals, and you'll notice other speed checkers use them as well. You might also notice on this slide, though, that Google has left the first input delay metrics out of Chrome's developer tools and Lighthouse and replaced it with TBT, or total blocking time. This metric measures the total amount of time between the first contentful paint and time to interactive, where the main thread was blocked for long enough to prevent input responsiveness. So pretty much how long does it take since the user thinks the page is loaded until it can actually be interacted with? And this metric is a bit more useful in debugging than the first input delay because it can show developers what tasks are taking up too long and are blocking the main thread. As some tasks are expected, this value is only measured for tasks that are longer than 50 milliseconds. So in this table, if the main thread task takes a total of 560 milliseconds to complete, only 345 milliseconds of it will be considered as blocking time. And I hope this helps you see why total blocking time is a great companion metric for time to interactive, as it helps quantify the severity of how non-interactive a page is prior to it becoming reliably interactive. And as we're short on time, let's just jump in Chrome's developers tools and see how it can help us with the core web vitals. And in order to do this, you will need to, of course, be in Chrome. And then you can either inspect any element on the page or use a shortcut, and that will trigger the developer tools panel. Then you want to find the performance tab in the top menu, and this might be hidden initially if you've never used it before. So you will need to click on the two right pointing arrows to see more options. And when you find it and are on the page you want to test, hit the refresh button on the left side. This will force the page to load again, and the performance report will start recording the load. And there's no need to do anything, but just wait for it to finish on its own. You might want to also tick the screenshots option before hitting the refresh button. So make sure to do this first if you want to see the page load frame by frame. Once the performance report finishes loading, you will see something very colorful, similar to this image. The top part will show you charts from frames per second and CPU usage, which are part of the page's runtime performance, and we're now only looking at the load performance. But keep in mind that you can use the overview to zoom in and out or select specific portions you want to see more details on in the panels below. The next section of interest lies under the main dropdown, as this details the main thread activity that we were talking about earlier. It's here that we can see what's keeping the main thread busy and for how long. Different colors mark different types of resources. So in this example, yellow is used for scripts. The last area of interest in the Summary tab, once you click on a resource or even in the main section, the Summary tab pulls in extra details. So these details will vary based on the resource that you've selected. If you're not sure which resource that was, it will be highlighted with a blue border in the main section. Now, if we were to run a performance report on a real website, we might get something similar to this. And I use Zalando because I'm on that website all the time. Right above the main section, you will get a timings section where the different page load metrics will appear at their corresponding timings. So I'm talking about these little things here. You will find the LCP tag, so largest contentful paint, and when you click on it, it will trigger the Summary tab to show you more details, such as what type of element constitutes the largest contentful paint for this specific page. And in this case, it's this image here. And you can also see its size and when the LCP event takes place in time. So as you click on the LCP stamp here, you'll also get a highlight over the image like I have here. So this is actually coming from Chrome and I've not placed it here. And this can help you understand what the largest contentful paint is on your page and how late in the page load does it actually appear. When looking at the timings, you might notice some red tags like this one. So these are not necessary to appear, but if they do appear, they represent the cumulative layout shifts, and you can get more than one. When clicking on it, the summary tab will give you details about its value and also the position of the element that moved and where it moved to. So if you hover over moved from and moved to here in the summary, you will get a red highlight that shows you the layout shift directly on the page. And this is the highlight I'm getting. And when I hover over it, it shows me that this section of the page slightly moved down with all the content inside, making the text flicker a second. And if in your main thread activity, you see a lot of red raster areas after your LCP, so starting here and just going forward, you see stuff like here and this big one here, for example. These represent the blocking time. So a total blocking time value is shown here in the corner of the window. And this can help you investigate what type of scripts are running, should they be running so early, and how long are they taking. So for instance, this one is taking really long, and you can see it here in times. If you look at the timestamp, if I were to click on a link at about here, the main thread would be so busy, I would have to wait until it gets free over here for my click to actually take effect. So keep in mind that the test you're doing will reflect your network speed and location, which might not be creating the same conditions as for your users. So in this case, you can click on network while in the performance tab and either select one of the presets, or you can create your own network speed to kind of test against. So a good idea is to check the Crux report for your site and see what connection speeds most of your users come from, and always make sure to run performance reports for those speeds. So for example, when I check it for certain pages, I see that everybody is using 4G or 80%. So then I would test against the regular 4G to kind of get the performance for most of my users. Right, that's it from me, and I really hope you find this useful.
Thanks, Roxana. Yeah, there's loads of different insights that we can all gather from this. You go into a lot of depth, so thank you for that. Just in terms of timing, I wanted to ask you one thing about, where can people start with this? Because perhaps it can seem very overwhelming, and with all the different news or releases that Google is doing, and in our industry, things move quickly. So where can people actually start with this?
It is a lot of information because we're talking about what a browser does, which is quite complex. We just click a link and we see it loading and we're happy, but behind it a lot happens. So in terms of Web Core Vitals, I just suggest going to web.dev, which is Google's official documentation on it. And I think they did a really good job in explaining everything. They also provide information on how to improve these metrics and what to check for. So I think that's one of the best resources. And when it comes to using Chrome's developer tools, again, Google in its documentation covers every single report, every single tab, every single thing you can do with this tool. So you can get more information in there as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because Michael was asking what websites do you use to keep up to date with the development. So web.dev. Yeah, web.dev. Okay. And then Sherry's, how can we update WordPress
so with
sites if they're
WordPress,
not
it's a bit
complying?
difficult because you'd probably rely on some sort of plugin that would do some of the stuff for you. And it really depends what your problem is. Because for instance, if it's, let's say, a CLS issue, so you're seeing your main image shifting around, you can fix that by just giving your images dimensions. So then the browser knows I need to reserve this much space for an image that's going to load here. So then that fixes it. Do you need a plugin to do that? Probably not. I'm pretty sure WordPress is pretty good when it comes to using image dimensions anyway. So it really depends what the issues are that you're seeing.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We had some great tips from our speakers. Thank you again to Roxana and Sherry, and especially it's a national holiday over in Melbourne. I didn't realize that, so thank you for joining. And I'm also really happy that we have on today's show, well, and specifically in this section, we have people dialing in from 3 different countries, and the speakers here, including myself, are 4 different nationalities. We have British, Australian, Egyptian, and Romanian. So truly international, Turn Digi today. So we have 2 more sessions for the rest of the day. So we have tuning in at 12:30. We have Amanda, Levi, and David, and they'll be talking about local SEO, what should be part of your strategy, how to rank, and also checking the health of your website. So we'll have a little bit of a break now, and then we'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Thank you everyone for joining, and see you soon.